The world's biggest oil lifeline is burning, not in flames visible from satellites, but in decisions, deployments, and a leak that just changed the equation. US bombers have been deployed. Strike plans, or at least fragments of them, are now circulating. And when plans like these surface, it means one thing: escalation is no longer theoretical, it's being structured, calculated, prepared for execution. Because this is how modern conflict begins, not with declarations, not with formal announcements, but with positioning, with signals, with leaks that reveal just enough to shift perception and move markets. Think about this. A single bomber mission can cost millions. The infrastructure behind it, bases, logistics, intelligence, cost billions. Yet the systems it targets can be disrupted by much cheaper tools. Drones, missiles, cyber operations. This is the David versus Goliath reality. High-cost dominance, facing low-cost disruption. And that's why this matters. Because when the United States deploys strategic bombers near Iran, it's not just about military readiness. It's about signaling intent. And when intent is signaled at this level, the entire global system reacts. Now let's go deeper. Strategic bombers are not ordinary assets. They are designed for power projection, long-range capability, high-impact payloads, the ability to strike deep and fast. These are not deployed casually. They are deployed when stakes are high, when escalation is possible, when preparation is necessary. Now consider what a leaked strike plan actually represents. It may not be the full picture, it may not be final, but it reveals direction, intent, and direction changes behavior. Now look at the region. Iran sits at the center of one of the most critical geopolitical zones in the world, surrounded by energy routes, close to the Strait of Hormuz, a choke point through which nearly 20% of global oil flows. This is not just geography. This is leverage. Now imagine a scenario where bomber deployments escalate tensions further. Shipping becomes uncertain. Insurance costs spike. Energy companies reassess risk. And oil prices begin to move. Not because supply has already been disrupted, but because it might be. This is the risk premium, and it spreads quickly. Now oil rises. And when oil rises, inflation follows. Higher fuel costs, higher transportation costs, higher production costs. This spreads across the entire economy. Now central banks react, raise interest rates, tighten liquidity. But here's the problem. The system is already under pressure. Global debt exceeding $300 trillion, built on years of cheap money. Now that money is no longer cheap, and debt becomes harder to manage. This creates stress, across governments, across corporations, across households. Now move to financial markets. Stocks react to uncertainty. Volatility increases. Investors become cautious. Capital flows shift. Because risk is rising. Now here's the contrast. On one side you have the United States. Massive military capability. Global financial dominance. On the other side you have Iran. A regional power. Using asymmetric strategies. Missiles, drones, proxy networks. Lower cost. Higher flexibility. This is the imbalance. And in that imbalance lies vulnerability. Because high-cost systems are not designed for endless low-cost pressure. Now multiply that pressure over time, across multiple fronts. This becomes a financial drain, not just operationally, but strategically. Now let's connect this to the broader geopolitical picture. This is not happening in isolation. Global tensions are already elevated, multiple regions experiencing instability, competing powers positioning themselves. This creates a complex environment, where actions in one region affect others. Now bring in the financial layer, because this is where the real story unfolds. The global financial system is built on stability, stable energy prices, stable trade routes, stable currencies. But when stability is questioned, the system reacts. Now consider the hidden forces behind this escalation. The first is resource control. Oil is not just energy, it is leverage. Control over supply routes means influence over global markets. The second is financial dependence. Markets depend on liquidity, cheap money. But central banks are tightening, removing that support. The third is technological asymmetry. Low-cost tools capable of high-impact disruption, changing the balance of power. Now combine these forces: geopolitical tension, financial vulnerability, technological disruption, and you get a system under strain. Now let's step back and look at history. Because this pattern has happened before. Before major conflicts, there are signals, military positioning, strategic leaks, economic adjustments. Before World War I, alliances formed quietly. Before World War II, economies shifted before open conflict began. The signs were there, but not everyone recognized them. Now look at today. Different technology, different actors, but the same pattern: preparation, positioning, escalation below the threshold of war. Now let's look forward. In the next 24 to 72 hours, developments may accelerate. Statements, military movements, market reactions, oil prices may spike, volatility may increase, because uncertainty is high. But the deeper shift is long-term, because once a system enters this phase, it doesn't easily return to stability. It adapts, or it breaks. Now consider the broader implications: higher energy prices, more volatile markets, increased geopolitical tension. This creates pressure on governments, on economies, on societies. This is not just a military situation. This is a systemic shift. Now here's the most important point. The global system is already fragile: high debt, tightening liquidity, geopolitical tension, and now, strategic military escalation. This is the convergence. Multiple pressures aligning at once. This is how crises begin. Now here's the final warning. The deployment of US bombers and the leak of strike plans are not isolated events. They are signals that the system is entering a more dangerous phase, where small triggers can lead to massive consequences, where escalation can move faster than expected. History shows us what happens next. When systems reach this point, they change. Not always through immediate conflict, but through pressure, through instability, through shifts in power. The only question is this: are we witnessing strategic positioning that will stabilize the system, or the early stages of a larger conflict that will redefine global power, energy markets, and financial systems for years to come?